Hello, and welcome to the Beyond Screens Alternative Controller Show. My name is Alistair, and with me, as always, is my co-host Tatiana.
Hello. Well, you know the drill. In this show, we invite creators of file-controlled video games to tell us about their work and how they work and show us what they're working on and all this fun stuff. Anyway, the sentence makes no sense. This is
I
the
loved
vibe
it.
we're looking for.
I loved it. I'm glad to be back doing this. Usually it's me who makes the terrible sentence that doesn't make sense. So I'm kind of quite glad to be not on the spot this time around. So, for those of you who may be new to the world of alternative controllers, these are games made to be played using unusual custom-made controllers. So, for example, a game might be controlled using a door stopper, or perhaps an electric guitar, or maybe even a paper shredder. Or the creator might build a totally new object made by soldering together their own electronic components.
And today's guest is Martzi Campos. So if you don't know her, well, you will in a few minutes. But more importantly, she's a goddess when it comes to mixing storytelling and ALT control. So Martzi is an artist and interactive designer. She's living in LA, Los Angeles, California, United States of America. She has a BFA in painting and installation art at the Rhode Island School of Design and an MFA in interactive media and games from the University of Southern California. And her games include interactive pop-up books and AR escape rooms, and include all manner of handmade props. Martzi currently teaches game design and works at the Game Innovation Lab at the University of Southern California, which is hard to say, so I'm going to say USC from now on.
So before we invite Martzi onto the screen, let's have a look at some of her work. This is Curiouser and Curiouser.
Curiouser and Curiouser, an interactive pop-up book experience by Martzi Campos and Yu-Ting Su. Down, down, down. Would the fall never come to an end? Once, said the Mock Turtle at last, with a deep sigh, I was a real turtle.
Shouted the queen. Can you play croquet? The soldiers were silent and looked at Alice, as the question was evidently meant for her. Yes, shouted Alice. Come on then, roared the queen, and Alice joined the procession.
Let's welcome to the stream our guest, Martzi Campos. Woo!
Hello.
Martzi, how are you doing?
I am doing all right. It's always a little intense to see your own student work again.
Yeah.
that was kind of a treat.
I mean, it's a wonderful piece of work. I was like really stunned by just like the quality of all the handmade pieces and the imagination that go into it, and like the fact that you'd managed to fit all of the electronics and stuff inside between two sheets of paper and like, I mean, it's a little bit of magic, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it was honestly probably my second project I have ever done with Arduino. So it was a really fun challenge to kind of figure out how to build a whole pop-up book with those materials inside. And I discovered the real magic is actual just greeting cards, which actually were the perfect way to discover how all of that worked. I bought so many greeting cards during that project and just tore them all apart.
Right. And so
That's
what
something
is...
you're
No,
sorry,
go
on.
ahead. No.
Okay. So I had the chance to meet you a few weeks ago when I was in LA, and I know that you like to do that. Tear open objects, look what's under the hood, and try to improvise based on that, basically, right?
Yeah, honestly, I think it's one of the best ways to kind of, especially if you're coming from a non-electrical engineering or background. I come from the fine arts, so I think breaking down simple electronic toys, greeting cards, and seeing how they work once you have like a really basic understanding of circuitry and a few sensors, it all of a sudden you're like, oh, I see how they do it. And they do it so cheaply and so efficiently because they have to be mass produced that it's a very optimal solution, and it's a very lazy solution. So often it's just like, we slap a piece of foil and some hot glue and now it plays happy birthday. And you're like, that is genius. And you could over engineer something, especially as a new designer, when you're thinking, okay, how do I make a pop-up book? Well, I'm going to need a motion sensor and I'm going to need a gyrograph. No, you need a light sensor. You need, everything you can buy at, a greeting card store or CVS or whatever.
So the actual, like, the bits are the like components that they used, were they harvested from greeting cards and then put inside your pop-up book?
Generally, yeah. Actually, I don't know if I might have, I gave Adafruit plenty of money, as well as all those good sites. But I think, when it first came to testing, absolutely. And in fact, on that last page of the book, there's the croquet tournament. And we were trying to figure out how to sense we had to put a ring on, and then you had a flamingo croquet mallet that you would hit with your finger. So you'd have a little flamingo on like the hedgehog, because it's Alice in Wonderland. When my partner and I, Yuting Su, were trying to figure out what is the best sensor for a flicking motion. And we can translate that into the game, and we were like, oh, definitely a flex sensor. And actually it was terrible. And it just didn't work at all. And I had fun in my harvesting of all these greeting cards. I found one that was like, blow on a fake candle and then the whole thing lights up. And I was like, what's inside here? We tear it open. It's just a little piezo sensor. And then I noticed that when you flicked the candle instead of blowing on it, there you go. Yeah, it's thank you for showing it.
That's all right.
When you flicked it, it also worked instead of just breathing on it or blowing on it. And I was like, this. And so we actually just tore it right out, hooked it up real fast, and we were like, this is it. This is what's going to go inside the hedgehog.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense to simplify things like that. And I mean, I guess, like, just so, I mean, the process of making this, like, what were the origins of it? Was it, what led you to create an interactive pop-up book in the first place?
So like I said, it's a student project. So I was in grad school when this was created, and they have a course here at USC, which is a production focused course. So they were like, you are chained to one other person for an entire semester. You have to make a game from conception to gold master, not necessarily in Unity, but back then it was in Unity. Now our students use Unreal 2. Or sorry, Unreal 4 or 5, whatever number. But so I had heard, actually what inspired it was I heard about a competition here on the campus called the Wonderland Awards. So USC actually has a 2,000 piece Lewis Carroll collection in one of their libraries, and they host these awards for works that are inspired by it. So I met a student in my graduate cohort, and neither of us had anyone to work with, and I was like, hey, do you want to work together? And then Yu-Ting was like, yeah. And then I was like, listen, I really want to win this competition. And she was like, so do I. And at that point, I had already taken some physical computing classes, and I knew I was passionate about that. So I was like, I want to do an alt control. And so we divvied up the tasks. Basically, I built the book, and she did a large part of the programming. And together, our forces combined, somehow that book came together, despite her, it was one of her first programming adventures. And again, like my second project in Unity or in Arduino ever.
That's amazing for a start. Not the first time I say this, the second time I'm saying this on this show. Sometimes it's just amazing. Alistair, let me know if I'm derailing thing, but something that we didn't talk about that I think is amazing is how you get inspired so much by narrative design and storytelling. Usually in alt control, we go for more arcadey type of games, which makes sense because we often see these games working in events and festivals. So we often go for multiplayer arcade games, which makes sense. But it means that we are missing a huge part of what games and especially indie games can offer. And one of the things I love with your work, one of the things, plural, I love with your work is that you really put the controller to the service of the story. And I do believe that this game was really the start, at least it looks like this in your portfolio, of how the controller and an embodiment of the interaction or really serving the storytelling. So if you could tell us a bit more about that, that'd be fascinating for me at least.
Yeah, I would be so happy to. So I think I come from an installation art background, and for me, I get really excited about objects, like specifically magical objects. I never grew out of that phase where I wanted to find the key to the secret garden, the wardrobe to Narnia. Like, I want my invitation to the other world, and I want it real and tangible, and I want it to surprise me. And so all of my explorations into like physical computing and all controllers, I think, are just this desperation to make objects that feel like that. One of the big points in Curiouser was to make sure that the gameplay was in the book and on the screen. We very much wanted the book to be just as equally as exciting as the screen, which screens are hard to compete with. Like, I actually have a background as a preschool teacher before I started teaching college. And, screens are enrapturing. They move, they animate, they're exciting. And so to have a book, I think a pop-up book has an advantage to it. It changes every page, but to have it really compete with a screen and to be essentially the play to happen both on the screen and on the page. And if you'll look at the second page of the book, there's the tangrams, which is you pull out these white little squares, and then the play actually happens on the mat. You build these little bunny tangrams as Alice's neck expands, and you see all these like bunny tangrams to build. That part of the game is sped up because those tangrams are hard to do, or at least in the video. And we specifically designed that page to be like, okay, you see something on the screen, but you're physically touching and you're physically playing down on the book. And there's things to find, and yeah, there you go. You pulled it up. Things to find, and all this really exciting material to touch and interact with, and then kind of have the solutions hidden in Alice's very long neck, which is from the book. Everyone thinks Alice just grows. No, at one point it's just her neck that gets really long. It's
Oh, really?
Yes. Disney lied to us.
Okay.
But there's something that speaks to me about this thing of, because the tangrams, I guess the computer can't police whether or not the player is, getting the tangrams right or whatever. You kind of take it on trust. But I think there's something, to me, I think what's quite interesting about this is, I don't know, to me it feels like this is a book to be enjoyed the way children enjoy books. And I think an adult would want to go through everything linearly and have ticked off everything before they move to the next page. But, you know, I remember playing kind of puzzle books as a kid, and you would flick around and, you know, oh, I'll do this one, I'll do that one, oh, I like that picture and things. And it kind of lends itself to a sort of freeform kind of thing that sort of doesn't, it is as linear or non-linear and, you know, and policed and not policed as the reader wants to use it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we were really gunning for this award. So, and these are like, you know, so we're trying to appeal to these judges. So I would say this book is kind of in a halfway point. We definitely geared it towards children, and to have that like kind of frenetic, like, no, what's on this page, back forth, you know, like the levels jump very quickly. There isn't really any progress tracker. It's about play. But at the same time, we did want to win, and we did. Let me make that clear.
Oh.
But so like there's like the reason we did tangrams at all is to reference that Lewis Carroll, aka Charles Dodson, was a mathematician, and we searched really hard for a math thing that also worked with Lewis Carroll, you know, like the storyline of Alice in Wonderland, that could be approachable for children. Like I said, those tangrams are a little hard, but they're doable. So I think I if I could go back, I think I would gear it more towards kids to really kind of and just play into the wonder of it a bit more. But like I said, we were also trying to appease some judges. So
And it worked.
Yes.
it worked. And you know, what's really cool about it is that they keep all the pieces in the collection. So all the pieces that are submitted then become part of the collection. So like tons of student work becomes part of this like amazing Lewis Carroll collection. I can't, like, if you are a student at USC, if you're in Los Angeles, it's an amazing collection to check out. And I gained a real appreciation for just like the art and the artistry that not only of Lewis Carroll, but that he inspired in a whole bunch of artists. So it's a really cool thing, and I'm actually super passionate about adaptation in general. So it was like a lot of fun to make.
And of course, you've created this picture book, but I mean, you have a background in art and illustration, and you know, I think, you know, having looked at your artwork, you have a wonderful, you know, picture book style to a lot of the things that you create. I mean, would you be able to tell us about your art and design background?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So I went to the Rhode Island School of Design, and I majored in painting, but I very quickly stopped painting. And like started, actually, honestly, what happened was I was doing these like collage fabric paintings at art school, and then I got a studio space that was like essentially two sizes, like bigger than everyone else. And I panicked, and I was like, I've got to do something in the space that they're going to take it away from me. And that's how I got into installation art, was just fear of losing. That's not entirely, it wasn't only that, but so then I started doing these like big fabric installations. And I think, again, it was escapism. It was this desire to build like a whole world. And then in terms of my own drawings, I don't really consider myself a proper illustrator, but I do love to do cartoons. So pre-grad school, I did a drawing of my day every day for a while and posted it publicly, just to have a progress and draw and practice like that. But yeah, generally I don't. Yeah, there's my art. Yeah, that's one of my first installations. Sorry for the delay, but yeah, that's the first installation I did to keep that studio space. It's under coating and whole bunch of fish. I've got a very traumatic story about that shark in the piece, if you want to hear a really painful art critique story, but I won't subject you to it otherwise.
Oh, well, if you want to tell a story,
please do.
Okay, yeah, no.
We are here for the drama.
No, I've dreamed about being interviewed and being able to tell the story, so you're fulfilling a wish for me. I had that critique, and it was the first time I got to meet the head of the RISD painting department ever. And he looked at it and he said, that shark is really beautiful. It would look great on my couch, but it isn't art. And I was like, what? You know, I'm 19. Like, what do you, like, the head of the department's telling me something I made is an art. And I'm just like, oh. Then and he's like, art should shock, it should be uncomfortable. And I was like, what about, the old masters? They were commissioned, they're just illustrators then, like, which is like I'm proud of myself that I could even formulate any sort of argument. I was already traumatized. And he was
I
like,
mean, you could write "fuck the police" on the shark if it's all
I know.
about shocking. I mean,
that would have done it though. That would have done it. I was like, wonder and delight are perfectly valid reasons to create art. And then he said in response to the old masters, he's like, well, Caravaggio's Death of a Virgin is art because it shocked and he used a dead prostitute. And I was like, that is not how I feel about art. So that took a little bit to get over, but it didn't slow me down.
Okay. Yeah, quite violent to hear when you're that young, I guess. When you're older, it's okay because by now I assume that you heard all sorts of things and you're used to it. But when you are young, I mean, it's a dream crusher, this kind of thing.
Yeah.
But you kept on working on your art, so that's okay.
Yeah, and I think, it definitely inspired, like, I don't care if it's art. I care if people have an experience with it, which I think is a designer mindset. Like, I think I make art, me personally, but I think part of interactive art is interactive design, because inherently you're caring about somebody else in that experience, and to have it communicate fun or wonder or dismay or whatever it is, you need to think and engage with the other person. And I think as long as you're taking into your emotions and their emotions into account, I think it's art.
Yeah, and it's a complicated question. We have the same deal with alternative controllers, and sometimes you have playful installations or whatever. It's just a term that came from the GDC. It federates a community, but it's more to the service of the community. It's not here to define stuff. Summing up art to shock is a bit weird. I mean, when I was a student, I heard a lot about John Maeda's definition that was design is answer to a problem, I guess, something like this, while art is a question to a problem. And yeah, at least it's poetic and you can interpret it the way you want. I like that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And like, I think, interactive work can be both. Sorry.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think it makes sense. It tracks with the kind of the design and the visual style of the stuff that you make. Not just 2-dimensionally, but also 3-dimensionally. I think it was your MFA thesis project was Beautiful Corner, and that is a whole bedroom filled with beautiful handcrafted objects.
Yes, yes, it is. It's deeply tied to childhood, and this point of so I knew I wanted to make an installation for my thesis. I knew I wanted it to be magical. Those are the things that I really care about. I've always said my artist statement is, if I can make adults feel like how they felt at a McDonald's play place as children, I have succeeded. That is like my emotional goal. So for Beautiful Corner, it was this challenge to build up a space that could bring back that childhood sense of wonder. And in the story, you're essentially confronted with a choice of like, your best friend and you met at camp, you found this magical water, and then as you discover the story, you realize that you and your friend essentially had a falling out, like in that very awkward moment in childhood where if your friend still believes in Santa or the Tooth Fairy or whatever it is, and you don't, there's this like, I want to say like cultural divide. There's this like deep embarrassment of like, you are still a child and I am now middle school adult. And you've crossed this threshold, and the friendship breaks down because of that. And then as you revisit this space, your friend's childhood bedroom as an adult, they ask you to help them make this choice of like, do I finally put away childish magic and this magical water that we found at camp? Do we pour it out at the end of the experience? Or do you, the player, drink the magic water and join them in a world where childhood magic is real, which is great, but also, you know, terrible because there's monsters under the bed and the fear of the unknown, the wildness of a child's imagination becomes like very real. So it was kind of this, that the thesis was kind of, can I make an experience that allows you to embody this character? And can I make the choice at the end compelling? Can I make people who are like, no, pour this out, this is bad news, and have other people, you know, open up a toy chest, find a glowing liquid inside of this toy chest, and then swig it down, not knowing what it is. And I had about 50% of people choose one or the other, so I was pretty pleased about that.
Oh, we have Laura in the chat saying, I got to experience Beautiful Corner at E3 and really enjoyed it. So many thoughtful details, and it very successfully evokes all those nostalgic feelings. Very impressive for something you're experiencing in the middle of a busy, noisy convention floor. And maybe it was E3, not sure.
Oh, that means a lot, you know, especially since like even all controls, like I feel like installation work, it's also temporary. So like Beautiful Corners mostly got thrown into a dumpster at the end of the day. Like I couldn't keep lugging it around. And so just to hear from someone who experienced it and had that moment, yeah, it's hard to show that stuff too, because it's a primary conventions and you're like, I want to have like a sweet private moment. And then you know, you're next to like, you know, the Nintendo booth or like blaring.
Yeah.
That means
but that's part of what's interesting. Like I assume, like John in the chat saying that it sounds like a wonderful experience, and it does. Yeah, I wish I could experience that, especially because having this kind of intimacy in a huge event that's almost the Las Vegas of video game is exactly the kind of contrast you're looking for. That's shocking, actually. So that's art. And this is congrats. Sorry, I'm gonna go back to this the whole show, but it's amazing to manage to make this kind of intimacy and this kind of mood in such an event.
My favorite, because you know, IndieCade was back when EU3 was a thing and IndieCade had a section there. It was always so amazing to be essentially in a very weird booth area surrounded by extremely commercial games. And then the people who would stumble in and experience the IndieCade games and be like, what, where am I? My favorite was I had someone, because it looks like a set, I had someone stumble in and be like, where's the game? And I'm like, you're standing in it. And I went through my whole spiel, like, this is kind of like an escape room, but it's more narrative, blah, blah, blah. And I finished it and I just saw this blank glaze and they looked at me and goes, so is it VR? And I was like, no, it's just R.
That's about escape room. Someone else is saying, so that is bringing a lot of stuff in the chat. So someone else is saying, I also played it with my daughter at an IndieCade, and it got her started down a lifelong obsession with escape rooms and interactive theater. And by the way, the daughter in question poured out the water. But yeah. Clearly drank the Kool-Aid.
That's awesome. Oh, that makes me so happy. Yeah, and it was always interesting to see like younger people play it. I think they definitely were more practical about it, and older people I think were like, nah, I want to go back back to time. Actually, it was very strange I showed it at my thesis show, and then at E3, and then at IndieCade was the last time, and then I was throwing it, essentially the walls, the whole bunch of it, into the dumpster at the end of the show. It was actually a really sad moment, and I'm cleaning up, and then I'm like putting everything away because we've got to get out of there, and then I open up the chest to clear everything out of there, and there's still a bottle of the water from, like, you know, I think the play tester hadn't used it, or like, you know, I had reset and then we didn't have time to run it. And so I see it and I was like, okay, I just got to clean this up, and I grab it and to pour it out. And then I was like, oh no, like I was confronted with my own choice at the end of the game. And I was like, oh, I can't pour this out. Like, so Sorry, I'm desperately like I uncork it real quick and I take a big swig. It's like I can't get rid of childhood magic. Like oh, that's gonna be bad juju if I pour that out. So. But it was meaningful even to me at the end.
Yeah, that it's just. I mean, it's a magical thing. I mean, how would you say? I mean, this may sound like an incredibly vague question, but creating a 3D space compared to creating something flatter, more illustration-y, like how do the two compare in some ways? Are there things that are different between them? Like, do you have a preference?
Oh, I definitely have a preference for 3D. I love designing spaces. I love figuring out what's the bare minimum you can get to do to make a space feel different. Like, I think one of my favorite examples was I did a AR game jam through IndieCade again. Love IndieCade. And we were at some other university, a whole bunch of teams scattered a bunch of rooms. And it's like, and I need to establish that I was extremely grumpy about AR at the start of this. I had Sean Bouchard and Jesse V. Hill were my like teammates, and they were like, let's do this AR game jam. We were invited. And I was like, AR stupid. I hate AR. Like it's useless and dumb. And then I realized we could do an escape room. And I was like, oh, IoT? Like, oh no, AR is cool. AR is very cool. So we had this like, empty classroom, ugly walls, fluorescent lighting, and we had like 24 hours. I had what I had rated at Staples in terms of like, actually, you see that poster right there? That's one of the things I painted in mad desperation as an image target for the AR. And we had to turn this I don't want to say dumpy classroom into a magical arcane library with like almost nothing. And that whole experience was so much fun, just like figuring out like, okay, what signage do we need? Like, how can we make this, in this short amount of time, how can we transform a space so that even the playtesters who are coming in get just enough material that they can then build upon to build that imaginary space in their heads. And so I think it's like there's anchor points and items that can help construct a space where you fill in the rest. Like even Beautiful Corner, it's named after a game design term for beautiful corner. Don't recommend naming your piece after a game design term. It becomes incredibly confusing after a certain point.
My game is called gameplay.
Yeah, no. But a Beautiful Corner is just essentially an arted up section of what is supposed to be a larger level, so that devs can turn around and show whomever, be like, here's what it's actually going to look like. And that was kind of the idea, is like, if I could, I would build a whole mansion full of rooms and magic, but since I'm a graduate student, here's just a corner. But even that, like, I think, like you said, hopefully it did work, because the people on an E3 floor were able to still be in this childhood attic room. And I think even in the dumpy classroom for the AR prototype, like, I think we had hopefully just enough there to make it feel like a transformed space. And so to me, I'm always very interested in how that happens. What do you need to do that? And what do you need? What's the least you can do to make a space feel different? I think I always like to go minimal viable product first. Because I think it's very interesting, like what little you need. And obviously it depends on different people. What's great about kids is they need almost nothing. You tell them like, we're in a firehouse, let's go. Like that firehouse is real and built in their heads. All of them are communally imagining it. It takes almost no effort at all. And then, adults need more security, more things to hold on to like enter that bridge of the imagination. So it's fun to build those.
Yeah, and that's kind of the mastery for me of all control playful installations, because us folks don't have the means of, like, some of my students, they are now working at Imagineering and this kind of places, and they have not endless means, but close to it. So they have so much to work with that their point is more a technical one, like how we will make this little detail on the rock to make it feel more real, etc. And for us, as we have less means, we have to, that's actually great, because we have to master how to build the magic circle. So it can be with AR, it can be with physical objects, but at the end of the day, it's always about deciding exactly how you will, sorry, I hesitated because someone wrote in the chat, how to actually aim for just what you need. And that's actually really hard to do. I do believe that it's really hard to do, especially because we work in a lot of events, as we said, that are really what I call the Vegas of games, really noisy conventions, places like this. So it's super hard to build the mood. And this is why your work is so amazing. It's never about just, the slot machine feeling or whatever. It's always a book, an intimate space, a room, a radio. We'll talk about this later, but always something that is much more classy, elegant design. I love your work for that.
Thank you. I mean, I love the frenetic like gameplay of alt control. I love like absolute chaos that is happening in there. But yeah, I do think there's that's the beauty of it. There's space for all of it. And the quiet designs do have a harder battle on the convention floor for sure.
I mean, well, I want to just point out, JRC West in the chat says, no matter how many toys their mothers send to their daughters, they're always stoked to have a cardboard box with a door cut out. I mean, couldn't say it better.
Yeah, no, I think Calvin and Hobbes has it 100% correct. Like that cardboard box, anything.
So do you have, like, I mean, I guess we're all competing with a cardboard box, and, you know, that's, that's a great challenge of what we do, is can we make something that competes with a cardboard box, makes use of the magic of the cardboard box? I don't know. But I guess, do you have a kind of, like, you said minimum viable product, like, is there a kind of a quick win? Like, if you were given, you know, a very small amount of materials, what would be your kind of go-to thing to get, you know, some kind of connection, some kind of enjoyment? Like, do you have a kind of...
Well, I mean, I know we're going to talk about the radio, but for me, and I'm object oriented. Like I think I like to start with constraints, right? So, and actually Beautiful Corner was really hard for me because I actually came up with my own narrative and I designed my own space. Like much more often, I like to be given things and then be like, oh, what can I do with this? Actually, so one of the things I do is I love to toy aisle. I love to browse and kind of see like, how can I manipulate with this? How can I play with this? I'm going to pull something off my desk right now that I've had sitting on my office desk for a while, but behold, this is, so Target usually has an amazing Halloween section. And every year I go there and I'm like, what cool little weird electronics do they have? And this is a genie lamp. This has like the little sensor on it, but usually it goes when you touch it and it... I don't know if you can see, but it smokes, it lights up, it's got a speaker in it, and like it reacts when you touch it, which is like so many affordances. And it's designed to kind of be this cheap piece of plastic that you put out for Halloween, you have some chuckles, and then it goes into the dumpster. And it has such amazing potential for a story. Like that's a game waiting to happen. I have not made that game yet, but I cannot wait. It's someday it's going to come to me and I am going to tear apart that lamp and put a whole lot of more electronics inside of it and build something that like works with that. It's like, there's lots of ways you can come up with ideas, but for me, I like starting with a constraint. Like, okay, what game exists with a touch sensor that can, that smokes, that lights up, that speaks, like, and that's all you need. Like, you've already got your affordances there. If you want to add two more things on it, like maybe it needs an NFC reader, like, so you can put a card down next to it or a few things, but I think there's tons of possibility in play just in that. Essentially, I don't want to say piece of junk because I think they're beautifully crafted. Gemmy Studios, like, they come up with like some real good Halloween electronics. I just want to be like, hire me to make like boutique. Yeah, shout out Gemmy Electronics. But yeah, I think there's just exists these like really small interactable things that we don't think about, that can build to something so much greater if we just like invest a little time and, I don't know, magic into it.
So, I mean, you mentioned a radio. I mean, maybe this would be a good time to talk about this radio.
Okay, because actually you weren't struck by the lightning of IDs, the ID gods yet for the lamp, but you did that already with a radio in the same context.
Yes, no. So the reason I have like a whole bunch of target props waiting is because I have already had success on this front. Again, I found a toy radio that was posted in the Halloween section. Unfortunately, I don't have them here with me today, but I picked it up, brought it to work, annoyed the bejesus out of my co-workers with it, and I was like, I don't know, I think it's something. And then driving home, it came to me in a flash. I was like, it's an interactive mystery drama. It's a radio playing. And I called my co-designer up, Jesse V. Hill, and I was like, yeah, you gotta make it. We gotta make it now. And he was like, okay, you know. And actually, funny enough, Jesse knew a whole bunch about radio plays, which I only like vaguely understood. He had actually listened to a ton, and we started working on a script, and I again tore it open and was like, okay, what's inside here? Like, how does this thing work? What are the affordances of it? And we're like, okay, we got lights, we've got not a potentiometer, but a rotary dial. It's actually like, it's not even the actual mechanics of a real radio. A real radio has a proper knob. This has like a switch. But actually that informed the game design so that you tune to channels. So you click on to a different channel, and that's actually a different choice the detective makes. So like every affordance actually builds into the game design of the piece. So it is like, I think Jesse put it, that the Claxo radio hour, the radio itself is the platform. Like you could put other games on it based on the affordances it has. There's only one game on it. And I think it's actually, but it's meant to be in that radio. The game itself addresses why the radio is talking to you. Like, as you saw in the video, it flashes red a little bit. It does not pretend to be a normal radio. It acknowledges you, the player, as the player, and acknowledges why you are making these choices for this lady detective who's going through the experience. It's because it's haunted.
So I had the chance to try it just for a few minutes when I met you. The object in itself is amazing, and I get what you are saying. These objects it's cheap materials, but not cheap design. I'd say, like, the design is on point. It conveys exactly what it should. The rotary encoder feels real, even though it's not supposed to be working like that. It feels great. It feels cohesive as an object, and it begs to be turned into more than just a noise machine, definitely. And the storytelling is amazing, and the voice acting, oh my god, it makes for a lot in the experience, the voice acting too, I'd say.
Well, that's because we hired a professional voice actress, Sarah Amala, also big IndieCade person, who's incredible. Obviously, she's a SAG actress. She's done work in like AAA games. Sarah's truly amazing. And then the rest of the voice is like, I'm in it. I'm not gonna act like voice acting is a whole other beast. But we have like, all of the designers are in it. Jesse's the radio host. I think Sean plays a surly, salty bartender in it. Like, we have tons of cameos and guests, but if you're gonna pay for one actress, have it be your lead and have it be Sarah.
Okay.
That's a
people
pro tip
notice.
for all of you in chat.
Exactly. The chat saying that someone in the chat, an uncle apparently, is saying that this person played the PC version of Claxo and loved it, and afterwards, this person imagined a whole universe of one-off bespoke physical electronic puzzles, like it, which are handed off from player to player.
Yeah. No, I do love the idea that it is in fact this haunted object and it references itself, like that it exists and continues to go out into the ether and collect souls makes me very happy. But what's nice though is that while we were building it, we realized that the 80 million audio files were not going to fit on an Arduino Uno. We started using Unity to manage all of it. My coworker who was doing the engineering on the project, Sean Bouchard, very rightly pointed out, you could just make this a digital game too. And I was like, oh, yes, thank you. That's a good idea. So that I'm very happy that it exists in both forms, that it can be played by anybody, that it exists on mobile and desktop and PC and all that jazz. So that, you can have some of the experience, but like truly the experience of like actually using the radio is, I think, another level. It was also hard to show though on the convention floor. An entirely audio-focused game, also hard to show.
Yeah, it's so hard to showcase all control that it's nice when you have other way to do it. People in the chat are saying that I'd love to see a longer form escape room like experiences where Claxo is revealed part way through, which I do believe is an amazing idea. Yeah.
We've definitely joked about like putting it into installation pieces, or like essentially like the file, just in someone's digital game, also just like having a radio in the corner and all of a sudden it's just a game in a game. I think both would be very funny and fun to do. Like, I think it is an exciting thing just to have sitting for someone to find. That would be the best way to discover it.
I like that idea, and do you think, like, presumably when people come up to it at, they see it at an exhibition, at a, games festival or something, and they're there looking for things to play, and so they sit down and they go, oh, I must be able to interact with this, so they start interacting. Maybe they don't do that. I've been exhibiting something recently where people walked past it every single time, and I was like, it's a big red button, what am I doing wrong? Is there, like, if you were to put the Claxo radio in, say, a library or something, what do you think you'd need to do to get people to give it that first little interaction?
It's funny because this is so bordering on something I cannot talk about, but if I had to design it, if someone did ask me, I think what Claxo does is it does call out it to the player initially. So it has an idle state where it like plays some jaunty tunes, and then every so often the radio announcer calls out and it's like, aren't these tunes delightful? There's even more exciting adventure on channel 4. And so I think you do need to kind of like have it be pretending to be a normal object for a bit, and then essentially break that, essentially break the fourth wall and come be like, I'm playable. You can play me. Come here. And I think I think in a larger space, it's not meant to be played by everybody, like in a much more like in a library with a bunch of other, like let's say an Omega Mart situation, or like
I was about to mention that. Yeah,
like that's one of the cool things about these larger installation pieces that are becoming more popular, is that the feeling of discovering in something special. I think like being able to just be, oh, did you find this? So I think like part of it is the mystery, so it doesn't need to be aggressive. That being said, when I showed it at GDC, for alt control, but we were not on the convention floor, they were like, that's going to be impossible. So I was showing it next to like a bunch, like a break room / food area. And so I had a bench and this little radio and a sign, and people would just come over and sit back facing me and eat their lunch. And I was like, I am so sorry. There is in fact a game here if you'd like to play the game. But they didn't see a screen. And, you know, no one sees a radio and thinks, oh yes, I'm going to play a game today.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of weird things, expectation setting, which I had to be very explicit about at a place like GDC, which was like, no, you are, this is the thing.
Yeah, but conventions are really special. I mean, people, it's like the CES of video game in a way, and people are competing for everyone's attention because most of these people are looking for fundings or publishers. It's a really weird environment actually to exhibit as compared to even just an art festival where people are not selling anything. And it's interesting that you are mentioning Mia Wolf, because this is exactly the kind of stuff they are doing. And on a really practical point, it's actually also how they filter the number of people that will be doing the same stuff at the same time. Because let's say you want to go through a fridge, typical Mia Wolf situation. You have a fridge, you open the door, and actually inside the fridge is a magical world. Well, there is only one fridge, so one people at a time can go. And the fact that it's not too obvious is a way to filter the flux of people and make sure that there is not too much people doing that, and keeping this reveal as actually a revelation. Like it's, oh yeah, I discovered something. So it's always tricky to have just the right balance, enough affordances so people come and understand that it's playable, not too much so it's still intimate, a discovery, and filters somehow the amount of people that are interested in the same stuff at once. So it's a really hard balance to find. And I was amazed at how Mia Wolf does it, for example, but they have a lot of means, obviously. So
no, it's the constant struggle because, like, you know, even in my thesis defense, you know, they were like, this is a 30-minute plus experience for one person. What's the throughput? And I was like, the throughput is, who cares? You know, but you know, you do care because you want people to experience your work. People want to experience your work, and you want to be able to like say, yeah, you can. And like, you know, all of a sudden you're looking at a sign-up sheet and you're like, actually, you can't. And that's terrible. And so I do think, like, you know, but you want it to feel magical. You don't want to shove 50 people through an experience and just, you know, like it loses its magic, right? And so I think you're right. Like if you have affordances or means or multiple ways to handle those large groups, those are incredibly tough design challenges, and it's really amazing when they do work. And, you know, and I think, like, you know, with Claxo, we kind of split the baby, right? We got, you know, because it was an entirely audio-based experience, we were able to build a digital radio and like have a version of it to share. And like, is it as good as having the actual radio in front of you? No. Is it much more convenient? Yes. So like, I love the idea of like being able to do both, to build these experiences and then to have some version of it that is accessible. And because I do believe like that's the real pain point in all controllers is accessibility. Just in terms of like, I want to try it, I want to get my hands on it, and you're like, there's one and it's currently broken. So
yeah.
Some places manage to do it quite well. I'm thinking of 2-Bit Circus, who managed to have a lot of all control in the same space. I know you know the space because you did an internship there, right?
Yep. I got to help out as a student as part of their STEAM Carnival, which was a great experience. I learned a lot about building and fabrication. I mean, their workshop is incredible. And yeah, I worked on a rocking horse game. So we built a actual, you know, like those squirt gun games where you squirt and the little horse runs across. It was that, but you actually got to be the jockey, and there were these giant sawhorse rocking horses that I had helped design and build, along with like a lot of other really talented people. My favorite was that I actually, for the as the horses move across the track, I used the actual images from Edward Muybridge's horse photography of like the rider, like that all of those really hand traced from like his set of stills, which is one of the first like examples of like essentially, I don't want to say cinematography, but like motion and
chrono photography.
yeah,
I guess it's the
exactly.
term, yeah.
So that was fun to build, and like watching people like getting to rock back and forth and see their horse move was as you can see in the clip, the kids figured out instead of rocking, if you just shake it,
Oh yeah,
that works. So I was like, that's
that
not
works
really
too.
the goal. It's much more fun to rock, but game design.
Now, another project you mentioned recently, and I don't know, because you talked about doing some a jam with AR, and I understand you got a project called AR Box. Is this that game? Is this what that game grew into?
Yes, absolutely. So one of the cool things is that we were then kind of at the end of the game jam, some of the projects were selected and we got to kind of develop and ideate further using the AR tools that we were using. And we got to essentially build an escape room out of using, we called it an escape room in a box. So the idea is that you could have a box shipped to you full of materials, and you open it up and essentially build an escape room in your house. And one of our big things was like IoT integration. So Internet of Things. If we had access to hue lights, so we could change the lighting in the room. We also had a custom built IoT device, which was a glowing gem. Everyone loves a glowing gem. And that could activate things in the room as well. And so I think in that project, like I mentioned, I was really salty about AR. But I think AR is at its best when it is actually having an effect on the real world. So, or that the real world is having an effect in the AR. So like having a separate IoT device that can scan things, that can boop things, to use, you know, kind of a meow wolf term, and then have that information fed back to the phone, it all of a sudden, it feels so much more interactive. I think, you know, people, when you think about AR, you think about it, you know, you think about Pikachu, you know, on the ground and you take a picture with him. And like, I love Pokemon Go, like love it, love it, love it. But like AR is so much more than a 3D object sitting on a plane in a real space. Like that is, I honestly think, the least interesting part of it. You know, we've had used image targets so that two different phones see two different things, and like one says a secret message to the other player, and like that's like super cool. And the idea, like one of our first prototypes, you open up a book which has the phone in it, and then it uses the light sensor to be like, it's open. So it's like, you open the book, and then all of a sudden we have an alternate speaker blaring like wah, wah, alert, and then we have the lights in the room turn red. And like that is an experience you can do entirely in augmented reality, like actually augmented the reality, as opposed to just, oh, hey, a 3D model showed up.
That's
the way we think about AR is a lot closer to filters right now. Even when you mentioned this example of Pokemon Go, which I love too, that's not my point, obviously, but it's always about filtering a render on a screen, and the information is always unilaterally coming to the screen in the end. So this is the reason why AR can be right now seen as not having that much potential. But the moment you get out of this box of unilateral information coming at you, and this filtering mindset, that's actually opening a lot of doors.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's funny because like I feel like IoT had like its little heyday, and then it kind of calmed down and people aren't thinking about it right now. And I feel like, you know, as AR is developing with the HoloLens and all these things, there's a lot of like overlay over the world, but not integration with the world. And I know we're all a little wary about, you know, our toaster being able to connect to the internet, which is legitimate. We don't need, you know, DDoS attacks from our appliances. But at the same time, wouldn't it be cool to play a game with your smart fridge? I think so.
I'm hesitating, Alistair, because I know we cannot afford to go over our time too much today, because it's actually the last day of school for Marty as a teacher. Not as, but I love to put it that way. Little Marty, it's your last day of school.
It is the last week of classes, so I do eventually get back to class.
Well, with that in mind, shall we first? Regular viewers will know our show. We've got a couple of regular segments. So we've got our show and tell. We've also got the audience game. So you might be familiar with a little game where we ask our guests to come up with a brand new game or game object made using your suggestions in chat. All you need to do, chat, and I am going to switch the thing on now. All you need to do is type exclamation mark followed by the object that you want to see in Martzi's game idea. Type that into the chat. So if you want to see a panda in this game, type exclamation mark panda. If you want to see baguettes, real baguettes, then type in exclamation mark baguettes, real baguettes. And that will be added into the pool of objects for Martzi to come up with the idea for a game of. So, the bot is on now. The bot is listening to your inputs, so feel free to chat, to type in what you want to see in this game. But before that, we did want to do a bit of a show and tell, because we have, and this is actually a first for us, we have a version of one of your games that we can actually play live on stream. So, because Klaxo Radio Hour you can download from itch for PC and Mac, is that right?
And on the Apple iOS store.
And also on the Apple iOS store.
And I think Android as well. So, yeah.
So the world is your oyster, and it's certainly our oyster right now, because I am just about to bring it up. If you can hear me clicking through all of my... Yes, I will save. Okay, there we go. Klaxo.exe. Shortcut. Nearly running. And there we go. It's up on the screen, and we should be able to see it now. There we go.
Oh, hello there. Isn't this antique radio a delight? And what wonders await on its channels? You must want to find out.
So
if you would like to listen to a very special program, turn the dial to channel 4.
So it's just asked me, I think that was the voice of Jesse Vigil, is that right?
If you would like to listen to a very special program, turn the dial to channel 4.
So I think he wants me to turn it to channel 4, so I'm going to turn it over to channel
2,
4.
Channel 3, channel 4.
You have made a selection. Your choice will be confirmed in 3, 2, 1. Choice confirmed.
Set the dial to channel 1 to begin tonight's story.
Or to channel 6 if you can't get enough Klaxo.
Oh, so I want to begin the story, or can I not get enough Klaxo? What do you think, Tatiana? Can we get enough Klaxo?
Set the dial to channel 1 to begin tonight's story.
So,
go for Klaxo.
Or to
go for Klaxo. All right, let's go for some Klaxo.
Made a selection. Your choice
I like the way the colors of the lights change. I can picture that happening on the real thing.
Ah, yes, I knew you'd be different. Excellent.
Chester, what do you think you're doing? It's time for the story.
Just having a friendly word about the power of Klaxo, of course. They've got that great taste and those soothing bubbles that just make you want to set me free. Set yourself free.
Well, you certainly are passionate about your product, Chester. But that's enough for now. Our listeners want to hear the story. And for that, they need to stay only on the channels
with the
they're
delay,
told
obviously, because I'm
Perhaps at the
looking at
next
this
sponsor
through
break
Twitch,
we can
so.
speak more, listeners.
to. Now on with the story.
Everyone knows I write for the society pages, but that doesn't mean I have to enjoy going to all these functions. Still, when it's your best friend throwing the event, you have to go. For the paper and for Marjorie, I agreed to hobnob with the society elite, even if I'd rather be writing my next book. No, the only mystery I thought I'd be solving today was the one in my closet. Which dress to wear? Something to stand out, or something to blend in? The flashy red number Marjorie persuaded me to buy on our last shopping adventure is on Channel 2. The more sedate navy two-piece that my mother loves is on Channel 4.
I mean, I feel like we have to go for flashy red number.
The flashy red number.
Clearly the most exciting choice. But I'm loving the way it changes colours as we change dials, and I could see that in the video happening with
You have made a selection. Your choice
with
will
the
be
physical
confirmed
version
in
with
3,
the lights lighting up and
2,
all that.
1. Choice confirmed.
I will also say that half of the gameplay is also
After
not
some
going to the
serious
choices and
contortions to get into that
exploring
red
what
dress
is
and
on the
no
empty
small amount of
channels.
hemming and hawing over the proper shoes, I
Yes,
waited for Carlton to
the
pick me
only
up
way
in
to
his
solve the
car.
mystery is to not listen to the announcer. I will say that.
Right.
Is that you? You look like $1,000,000. And not unlike Lola Livings.
Who's that?
Oh, that's right. I forgot you have no interest in the crime novels of Sterling Gray. She's my favorite femme fatale in the whole series.
Oh, Sterling Gray again. I should have known. Poor dear Carlton still had no idea Sterling Gray was the pen name where I did my most satisfying writing. I kept looking for an opportunity to tell him, but it was nice to have him as a fan without knowing it's me. Anyway, I let him drive us to Marjorie's Save the Orphans Gala, and even let him summarize my own novel to me as we drove.
Well, isn't this quite the affair? Marjorie really pulled out all the stops for this one.
Yes.
My dear, you've got your grumpy face on.
Oh, you know how much I love to mix and mingle with the idle rich.
Pish tosh, you're a society writer. You love your job.
I said I loved being a writer.
Well, what else would you write?
What indeed? Silly me. But thank you. I promise to behave. We won't stay long, and then perhaps I'll let you take me to a motion picture.
I see the silent auction's drawing quite a crowd. Maybe I'll go have a look. Of course, if it's a Marjorie Banks party, I'm sure the buffet's also worth a visit. Take your time and make sure you get those vultures at the paper the requisite amount of fluff and gossip. I'll be only too happy to... Say, is that what I think it is? Excuse me, Cat. I'll be right back.
Don't worry, I love to be abandoned at stuffy
We won't
galas.
have time to play the whole
Really,
game,
darling,
obviously.
you'll stop my poor feelings into the carpet.
Marjorie, come here.
I'm loving
But
the snappy
You've outdone
dialogue
yourself.
of it.
The
It
ballroom's
is,
beautiful
like,
and the quartet style.
it is wonderful. Like, so who did the writing on the dialogue? Was that yourself?
Jesse and I both did the writing, though he puts it as Ben Affleck'd his Matt Damon. I was basically sitting in this chair being like, why did they say this? And Jesse had to write it. So I'll give Jesse the primary writing for it.
Right. But and like the sort of editing, because I guess the snappiness isn't just, you know, the kind of, it's not just the writing of it, it's how it's edited together. So there's this snappy back and forth. Was that
Yeah, I would say it's not edited. We've recorded it exactly how you would record a radio play. So how they did it. One mic, the entire actors ducking in and out. So that is not everyone in a recording booth recording their own lines. We have everyone all together, essentially doing the scenes, which is how they would have done it during the age of radio.
Yes. Wow, that's fascinating. That's like
it was a lot of fun to record that way.
Yeah. I mean, was that, you know, as part of the authenticity of it? Yes.
Yep. And we tried to use Foley from the time periods that are appropriate. We used a microphone that was essentially a replica of something of that time. So we tried to actually keep it very accurate.
Right.
The only time that it really kind of goes out of accuracy is when you were talking to Claxo.
Right.
When you were talking to Claxo will absolutely reference modern things. His music will sound a little bit more like not of the era, but everything else we're trying to actually keep it as accurate as possible. So they like builds up the authenticity of a 1950s, 40s radio play.
Right. Nice.
I told you, like, the voice acting is amazing also, not only because of the acting in itself, but the back and forth, the witty humor, the tone, the writing. It's really consistent piece. I don't know. It doesn't do justice to this game to say consistent, but it's actually the consistency. Like everything is so on point, on brand. It's amazing.
Thank you. That means a lot. We tried. We tried to get it really kind of like to match that style a lot.
I'll put the link to the game in the chat at the end of the show because I don't want people to leave us to go play the game because it's too.
But it is. I mean, it's a beautiful. It's a fascinating piece of work, and it's obviously I think I can see the time running out, so perhaps it's not a good idea to linger on it. So I've moved us on for now, but it's. I mean, I'm definitely going to be playing it all the way through after this. So
I will give you the link to everyone's listening right now, and I will give you all the links by the end of the show. It's too tempting for you to play if I put it now, but the game is free, by the way. Yeah, it's on itch.io. There is a Windows and Mac version. It's not such a long that much of a long game. The sentence is not grammar complicated for me. Yeah, okay. But yeah, it's not that long to play. So I really encourage you to play it. And I will give you the link and make full sentence now. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. English is my third language. I'm doing my best.
You're doing amazing.
Thank you.
Well, I can see we've had a bunch of different audience interactions come through the chat. So we do have a selection of objects in the pool.
I saw a magic lamp in there.
You saw a magic lamp in there. Yeah, that's a good one.
You're helping me out.
I'm guilty. I'm sorry. That was my.
Thank you.
We've got.
I wanted for you to have an opportunity to maybe struck by the the idea that you are missing for this magic lamp. So I thought maybe this would be happening today with us.
Well, maybe. Well, I could just see one that's just been added. Bikes and more locked to a public bike rail.
Oh my goodness.
So Mr. Beast Mode is putting long stuff, and one was so when you were playing, while you were playing, something happened that apparently there is an aisle with canvas and oil paints. It meant to be an easel, but it's an aisle now. Like a mix between a supermarket and a museum. Deal with it.
Well, I guess we shall find out what's going to come up. So, if you keep an eye on the bottom left of the screen, it's going to come up now when I press this key. Are you ready? Are you ready, Martzi, to find out what your construction materials are?
All right, let's do this.
Okay, so we present to you a mop, a hamster, an aisle with canvas and oil paints, a demon-possessed baguette, and a piggy bank.
Oh my gosh.
So it's a mop, a hamster, an aisle with or easel with canvas and oil paints, a demon-possessed baguette, and a piggy bank.
Oh, it's definitely. I'm gonna go with aisle because I think that's a misspelling or autocorrect that's actually far more interesting. So it also gives me a place to set it. I am Tatiana, don't be offended, but I am because we've got a demon possessed baguette, so it's got to be in France.
Obviously, that makes sense. Obviously.
And obviously since we have an easel and oil paints, I'm picturing actually a muralist. So you have a mural to paint in front of you. Okay, wait a minute. What else was it? Oh, I know a hamster.
A mop.
And a mop.
And a hamster. Yeah.
And a piggy bank.
And a piggy bank. Okay, well, obviously the piggy bank is about. Okay, I don't know if this is an all control game, but I do see it as you are tasked as a artist, a starving artist. This is your baguette is talking to you because it is your lap. And your piggy bank is empty. Like you have some coins rattling around that you can stave off, and to finish this you can eat the baguette and you can take money out of your piggy bank. I think you can either try to fish it out, or if you're desperate you can smash it. So you've got these constraints of like time running out in terms of food and wealth. Those are our indicators, and we are stuck in this island. We have to paint a mural, and I think there is a rodent problem and a disgruntled janitor that are trying to heed your progress. So you can nourish yourself, or you can pay off the janitor for just a little bit more time to finish this this creation that you were desperately trying to finish in an allotted amount of time. And I think it's like, essentially, you've got a hamster that slowly, squeaks around, messes up your panes, and a mop. The janitor coming in, also messing up your system and your space to create. And there's only limited resources while you desperately struggle to finish it. That is, if I had to, a game that I see formulating out of those materials.
And does this take place in a sort of digital space behind a screen, or is this taking place in the real world?
Okay, so maybe it's a floor mural, because I think that's the struggle. You're trying to like, and I think it's projection mapped, so I think it's the real space. And so you can projection map the hamster, because then all of a sudden little footprints scurry through. And then I think you could also projection map the mop. Like as you start to like clean it up, and you're like, now I'm not done. But I think the baguette is absolutely a real baguette that you've got someone Wizard of Ozing the minute they take a bite, being like, you will never amount to anything, sorry.
Food animatronics.
I know, I think it's a baguette, but you have someone, like, every time you have an actor watching them, and so like the act of eating is very visceral. And then for the piggy bank, absolutely, that's a real thing you have to smash in desperation. Like and it's a cute piggy too. Like
it gotta break your heart when you do it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, this feels like a crazy performance piece.
Yeah, but the idea of a participant coming and living inside that experience, the idea that you or I could come and become a starving artist is that's magical.
Yeah, not like real life at all.
It's too close to home. Yeah.
In real life, I don't have a hamster.
Yeah.
No, because then you could do some really fun things with like tracking, but then seeing the canvas get messed up in real time without actually, getting super messy. I think that would be really fun. I'm sold now.
Yeah, I mean, genuinely, I really like this idea of project and map painting with a mop and with a virtual or real hamster running around on the projection mapping, messing it up. That is actually genuinely something I would really want to play with.
Yeah. And I like the idea that's in the head in the chat where even the piggy bank starts talking to you, so it makes it harder to smash. Built in the piggy bank is real.
Please don't kill me.
Oh my god, this is absolutely brilliant. Well, I mean, if I had the capacity to fund pieces of interactive art, I would be throwing money at you right now.
Sweet.
Yeah, someone in the chat is saying, I hope the Kickstarter campaign will be launched soon.
That is absolutely fantastic. I mean,
the way you're thinking is amazing. So John said from the get-go, thanks, strong narrative start already. And I agree that so it's all fun and just silly design, but it's actually quite revealing how you took each piece as narrative setup, protagonists, the environment, and the interaction between the protagonist or the characters, the hamster, the janitor, etc. And you try to make it as consistent as possible, and used everything that was absurd as your base for a comedy. So that is such a lesson of design. I love it. Like, really, it's rarely that consistent. That's fascinating to see your brain working live like this.
Well, I think the randomization helped me out too. It was just like
it's actually it's helping. The absurdity comes from it too. And thanks to the chat for these amazing words.
Thank you. They were great. And I'm deeply grateful that it was Isle. That was key because
oh yeah, perfect. The perfect accident, happy accident.
Well, I mean, this has been absolutely fantastic, but I am afraid we are starting to run out of time now. So is there anything that you would, basically, like to talk to us about, or, like to tell the audience about before we head off for the evening or for the day?
Yeah, I guess like I will always make my a plea that's Arduinos and physical computing. If you have a desire or interest, it's never easier to get into them. There's so many wonderful things, and use the stuff meant for kids. Like that stuff is the best place to start. I still use so much like Arduino stuff that's like designed for like, an elementary school kid. I'm like, this is perfect. I'm using this. And so I would encourage anyone who has a hankering or desire to jump in. And then I will do a plug for anyone in Los Angeles, the USC Games Expo. So our big open house show is on May 10th at USC. You can go to uscgamesexpo.com to get information. It's from 5 to 10. We have 50 plus games of capstone work, student work, all amazing things to come check out. I highly recommend it if you're in the area. It should be a great time. We also have some amazing installation and all controller pieces, including one that was at All Control GDC, Blossom, which shout out to Laura, one of my thesis advisees. And yeah, come check it out. We'd love to see you there. It should be a really great time. I'm just double checking with my coworker over here. I said those dates right? Probably. All right.
So it's probably May
10th, 5 to 10 at USC. Go to uscgamesexpo.com for more information.
Fantastic.
There are so many games and things Martzi is doing and has done before that we couldn't mention. Like literally, we have with Alistair a little script kind of, and a third of it we couldn't mention. So I'm putting in the chat a link to Martzi's portfolio. Go check it out. It's worth it. And also a link to Claxo as promised. Alistair, if you'd like to conclude.
That's right. So just before we head out, I just want to give you a couple of announcements on what's coming up from IndieCade, because we are in the final month of IndieCade submissions. So late submissions close on the 31st of May. So that is the end of your birthday. Tatiana's birthday. Give Tatiana a fantastic birthday present by entering IndieCade this year. So you have until May the 31st to enter, and I can strongly recommend you do that. It is you all already know this. It is a fantastic festival to be a part of. Also, other ways to be a part of IndieCade are to take part in the Climate Jam. So, May the 19th to the 21st they coincide with something I've written down and I can't remember what it is. It's National Endangered Species Day. So, on May the 19th to the 21st, we'll be making games on the theme of wildlife trafficking. So if you want to take part in this, go to indiecade.com/climatejam to find out how to sign up and how to get involved. And thus, without further ado, unfortunately, it is time for us to say farewell. Thank you very much for Martzi for joining us. This has been absolutely wonderful.
My pleasure. This was a blast.
Thank you so much, Martzi. I love your work so much. I'm so glad that you could share all these wonderful insights with the audience and with us. Thank you, Alistair, for being the best. You're the best.
Oh, thank you.
Love you.
I can't be the best, Tatiana, because you're the best. So thank you very much for being a wonderful co-host, and it's fantastic to be on the show with you again. And of course the audience as well. Thank you everybody for coming along and watching and joining in with the audience game. You've all been fantastic. So
see you next month.
See you next month. Have yourselves a lovely evening. Have yourselves a lovely day. Bye-bye.
Bye.